You know that moment when something just clicks in your mind and suddenly you understand something that you didn't before? We call it learning, but here's the thing that most people miss. There's actually a specific type of learning that's happening in that instant that's completely different from everything else your brain does. Every time you become aware of something, your consciousness isn't just continuous, but is actually working in tiny, disconnected islands. That's not just some abstract philosophy. It's the hidden mechanism behind how your mind actually builds itself moment by moment. And if we're ever going to understand the human mind enough to replicate it in a machine and to achieve artificial general intelligence, we have to understand all of these processes that our consciousness is built from. The greatest minds in history, from ancient sages to modern neuroscientists, missed something fundamental about consciousness. Today's episode explores the true nature of consciousness. It could be the key to understanding both human awareness and artificial intelligence. Close your eyes for a moment and watch your thoughts drift by like waves. Each one appears like a brief, cresting breaker in the darkness, distinct and momentary, and separate from the next. Now, consciousness isn't the continuous stream that we imagine it to be. It's really a series of discrete moments of awareness. Each one is a distinct wave of our experience. Our current AI systems process information in a continuous flow, but what we experience as a seamless flow of consciousness may actually be a series of quantum-like moments of awareness. Like the water's surface, our thinking reflects the world around us. But concealed beneath this surface lies a vast ocean of complexity. Layers of intuition, emotion, and hidden drives shape how we think, how we learn, and how we perceive. As we strive to create truly intelligent machines, we must dive deep into these unexplored depths of the mind. I'm Evan Goldstein, and this is Deep Thoughts, an exploration of human cognition and the future of artificial general intelligence. It's pretty obvious that your mind changes over time. We have a word for it. We call it learning. But honestly, what exactly happens when you learn something? And whether there's more than one way to learn is a skill that's kind of still a mystery to us. Throughout this whole series, I've been focusing on these invisible, basic, and completely automatic things that make your mind tick. So let's dig into this simple and almost atomic type of learning that people usually call becoming aware of something. But here's where it gets interesting. This might be even more fundamental than you think. Eventually, I'm going to show you that becoming aware is actually one of only two types of learning. The other one is when you learn to like and dislike things. To prove this to you, though, I'll need to get into all the nitty-gritty details of planning and calculating and contemplating. So for now, you can just assume that if you want, that awareness is one of many types of learning. Becoming aware of something happens in just one single moment. Yes, things that happen before might set you up for that moment of awareness. But when it actually happens, it's like a snapshot. Boom, and done. One shot. Memories are probably the most obvious example of this awareness-based learning. Like maybe you remember a train derailment that you saw, or the time that you went to the beach with your family during a thunderstorm. This brings us to the first really interesting thing about awareness. It has content to it. When you're learning this way, your mind changes in a way that's directly connected to whatever caused it. You know, this is something that you're aware of. Sometimes it comes from outside of you, like when you notice your colleague's new glasses. Other times, you become aware of something that's already happening inside of your own head, like when you suddenly realize that you've been daydreaming this whole time. In every single case of awareness, you only know something changed because later on, you can see that you're different somehow. Sometimes you figure this out by looking inward, what people call introspection, which basically means looking inward at your own thoughts and mental experiences. Like you see a truck go around a corner, and then later you can think about what color that truck was. Or sometimes it's more indirect. You meet someone and you hear their name, and then later you're saying their name to other people. Most people assume that memory is straightforward, but what I'm about to show you reveals something far stranger. So here's how awareness actually works step by step. First, you experience something. Could be out in the world or just inside your head. Secondly, there's this invisible process that you can't control, records it. And then third, the next time you peek inside of your mind, or when you're in a similar situation, boom, there's this new pattern of experiences sitting there that wasn't there before. Here's what I mean. Maybe you notice a squirrel in a tree, and then later, when you're standing in front of a similar tree, you picture that squirrel in your mind. Or you're sitting in traffic mulling over a conversation that you had years ago, and then another day when you're sitting in traffic again, that conversation pops back into your head through association. Here's something that you might have picked up on in those examples. If memories are supposed to be defined by their concrete content, then both of those examples that I just gave count as memories, even though the source of the second one, the conversation, was internal. That's not how most people use the word memory, right? But as you can see, it fits the definition just as well when you're talking about things from your actual senses, like seeing or hearing. Seems like there's something way more significant going on with awareness than we first thought. And this insight changes everything that we thought we knew about how our minds work. This is worth diving deeper into. When people talk about introspection as seeing into your mind, that's usually just a metaphor, since there's no actual inner voice listening to itself, or anything like that. But the metaphor feels right because, as I mentioned earlier, being aware of things inside of your mind seems pretty similar to learning about the outside world. Every single time you see something inside your mind, you're creating a new learning, a new change. When you look at a memory, you now know that you have that memory. In other words, you just learned something new about your own mind, and that might change how you think going forward. Maybe you notice something specific in the memory, like that the truck in it was blue. Something that was always there, hadn't really noticed before. This is similar to Jung's split between the conscious and the unconscious mind. Because the content that you're becoming aware of is usually the same as what was already sitting there in the memory, most people call this process recollection, not awareness. But honestly, that's kind of misleading because it makes you think that nothing's changed during the act of remembering, when clearly something has. Like, you know that feeling when you're trying so hard to remember someone's name, and then suddenly, there it is? Each time we examine our own thoughts and memories, we aren't just retrieving information like a computer accessing its hard drive. We're engaging in an act of discovery that changes us in surprising ways. Could be that the path to artificial intelligence lies not in perfecting memory, but in creating systems that can surprise themselves with their own discoveries. To clear up any confusion about this, about the fact that you can form memories of experiences inside of your own mind, let's look at something really curious. Remembering your dreams. You can remember, basically become aware of events in your dreams, just like you can remember things from when you're awake. This is actually part of what makes dreams feel so real while they're happening, even though they're completely crazy when you think about it. No consistency, no logic, nothing makes sense. They don't line up with your waking memories at all. The ability to be aware of things happening in dreams is also why you still feel like you have consciousness while you're dreaming, despite all the chaos and nonsense in them. The really wild part that challenges everything we believe about our own experience is that people have known for ages that awareness and consciousness are somehow connected. They're not the same thing exactly, but to try to imagine being conscious without being aware of something, anything at all, whether it's how you're feeling inside or some idea floating around or just the world around you, isn't something you can do. But this creates a weird problem. Awareness, the way that I've described it, is limited to these short, self-contained bits of learning. You see or hear something, or think something and your mind learns about it right then, and you can remember it later. But when most people think about consciousness, they think about it as this continuous thing, like it's always on. Maybe that second belief is just wrong. It seems like even though you can be conscious at any moment, it's not actually true that you're conscious all the time. If awareness happens in moments, then consciousness isn't this continuous stream of human experience. Instead, you're aware of little chunks, like islands of awareness floating in this vast ocean of the unknown mind. And modern neuroscience and artificial intelligence research are starting to confirm this fragmented view of consciousness. Recent breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, especially with large language models and neural networks developed since 2020, have shown us that complex and seemingly continuous processing can emerge from discrete computational steps. These AI systems process information in distinct moments, taking an input, transforming it through layers of artificial neurons, and then producing output, much like these islands of awareness that we humans experience. The debate about whether AI systems are aware in any meaningful sense has actually helped researchers better understand that human awareness itself might be less continuous than we intuitively feel it to be. So this episode has walked you through how your mind can change through these moments of awareness. But by itself, this isn't enough to explain the whole picture of how humans learn. But the questions this raises are even more fascinating than the answers. There are still some pretty big challenges that we need to tackle. First off, even though awareness seems like a solid explanation for how you learn concrete memories, like remembering a tree, it doesn't really explain how you can be aware of more abstract things like feelings or concepts. Qualia, which is just a fancy philosophical term for the subjective felt quality of experiences, like what the color red actually looks like to you, or what pain actually feels like, and maybe even consciousness itself. There's also this unanswered question about what's actually happening during this whole process. The changes awareness creates inside of your mind, even though they're related to the source, aren't perfect copies at all. If you see someone slam a door, the memory in your mind might just be one frozen frame of that moment, or it might be all dressed up with extra details, like your thought about what caused it, or the word frustrated, or whatever other interpretations you layered on top. You should also be a bit suspicious about the whole introspection process that tells you later what the content actually is or was. Finally, we haven't explained why you learn any of this stuff in the first place. There's obviously way too much in the universe to become aware of it all. And even the things you do learn seem to get transformed into some shortened version that's useful to you. Humans are picky about what they pay attention to, and that's literally part of what attention means. So here's the question that will unlock the next layer of this mystery. What triggers awareness? In other words, what makes you become aware of something? I'm going to explore this more in a future episode because awareness is such a critical piece of both empirical learning, which is learning from experience and observation, and of introspective learning, which is learning from examining your own thoughts and memories and experience. Along the shoreline, each tide pool exists as its own distinct world, but together they form a continuous ecosystem. Our awareness does not flow like an unbroken stream, but it emerges as distinct moments, like tide pools of experience, each one complete in itself. Every conscious instant is a small universe of perception, thought, and of understanding, separated from the next by brief spaces of unconsciousness, so quickly that we barely notice them. Instead of trying to create AI systems that maintain continuous awareness, we might need to embrace the natural rhythm of consciousness, the way that it pulses between moments of clarity and then brief intervals of rest and reset. Perhaps true intelligence, whether natural or artificial, requires these gaps between thoughts, these small silences that give meaning to our moments of awareness.